I pay $5,600 in rent, yet my MIL told me to leave when my husband's first child arrived. Welcome back with a new real shock story. Before we start, comment and tell me which city you're watching from. At the end, don't forget to subscribe and rate it from 0 to 10. Let's enjoy the story, everyone.
I never thought my life would change so fast, or in such a painful way. I'm Alec Rose, and I want to tell you something that still feels like it's happening to me, even now. It all started months before I was even expecting the first real sign of trouble. My life was normal, or at least, that's what I thought. My husband and I had been married for 3 years. We had a small apartment in the city, which cost a lot way more than I ever imagined. I was paying $5,600 every month for rent. Yes, $5,600. I knew it was steep, but I told myself it was worth it. The place was perfect for us, close to his job and in a good school district for our future. I thought our home was our safe space. I thought we were building a life that could last, but I never knew how fragile that illusion was. I thought I knew I thought they respected us. At least, I hoped they did, but I was wrong. Everything started changing when I found out I was pregnant. I remember the moment like it was yesterday, the way my hands trembled when I saw the test, the quiet tears rolling down my cheeks, and the joy I felt inside. My husband was overjoyed too, and for a while, life seemed perfect. We started preparing for our baby. I imagined a warm nursery, a life full of laughter and late-night lullabies. But there was something in the air that I couldn't name, something heavy, something that was quietly creeping toward us. It wasn't long before my mother-in-law started visiting more often. At first I thought she was excited, maybe even happy for us, but the tone in her words began to shift. Little comments slipped into conversations about how expensive rent was, about how I wasn't pulling my weight, about how things should be different once the baby comes. I brushed it off, thinking she was just stressed, maybe worried about the family changing. But then it happened. One evening, about 2 weeks before my due date, she came to visit unannounced. I was sitting in the living room, exhausted after a day of doctor appointments. When she walked in, she didn't say hello. She just sat down across from me, looked me in the eye, and said something that froze my heart. "Alec, you should be getting ready to leave. When the baby comes, you won't belong here anymore." I couldn't breathe. My mind went blank. I asked her to explain, and she just said, "It's time." My husband wasn't there. I was alone. I felt like the walls around me were closing in, and that moment right there, it was when everything changed. I knew I had to understand why. Why would she say something so cruel? Why now? Why, when I was about to bring a new life into this world? I was paying $5,600 a month. I had no idea how she could think I wouldn't have a place here. I started replaying every conversation we'd had in the last months, searching for a clue I might have missed, but nothing explained it. Over the next days, her visits became more tense. She would drop hints about how things are going to be, and how I needed to prepare. My husband tried to calm me, telling me not to overthink, but I could see the strain on his face. It was like he was caught between two worlds, between his loyalty to his mother and his love for me. One night, I couldn't sleep. My stomach hurt, but it wasn't the baby. It was fear. I sat in the dark and thought about everything she had said. I thought about the future. I thought about the baby. And I thought about my home, the place we had worked so hard for, the place I was paying thousands of dollars for every single month. And now, she was telling me to leave. I couldn't understand it. I still don't. But in that moment, I felt something shifting inside me, something I didn't expect. I realized this wasn't just about rent or space. It was about control. It was about something deeper, something I couldn't yet name. That's when I made a silent promise to myself. I would fight for my home, my baby, and my peace, no matter what it took. But I had no idea how much this promise would cost me. Because what came next was something I could never have predicted. After that night, nothing felt the same. Every morning I woke up, there was a quiet weight in the air. My husband tried to act like everything was fine, but I could see it in his eyes, the worry, the guilt, the helplessness. It was as if we were both walking a thin line, and at any moment it could break. The days before the baby arrived became a blur. I spent them going to appointments, setting up the nursery, and trying to focus on my pregnancy. But the words my mother-in-law had said haunted me constantly. "You won't belong here anymore." What did that even mean? Was it about the baby? Was it about me? I didn't know, but I was terrified to find out. She started coming over more often, and each time it was different. At first, she would sit quietly, watching me as if she was studying my every move. Then, she began making pointed remarks about the rent, about how we were wasting money, and how she thought we should be living somewhere smaller. But she said it in a way that felt personal. It felt like she was talking about me. That one afternoon, I had enough. I asked her directly why she kept saying these things. She looked at me with a strange smile, almost like she was waiting for me to understand. "You don't get it, Alec," she said softly. "When the baby comes, things will change. You'll see." Then she left without another word. That night, I couldn't sleep again. My stomach tightened with anxiety. I thought about my husband, about how much he loved me, but also how much he feared upsetting his mother. I wondered if he even believed her. But deep down, I knew something was coming, something I wasn't ready for. 2 days later, I went into early labor. The rush of emotions was overwhelming. Fear, joy, pain, excitement. My husband was by my side, holding my hand tightly, whispering that everything would be fine. But even in those moments of intense focus on the baby, I could still feel its attention between us, and the shadow my mother-in-law cast over our lives. When I woke up after delivery, the world felt different. The baby was perfect, fragile, and beautiful. I named her Lily, but just hours after we brought her home, the peace we hoped for vanished. My mother-in-law arrived unannounced. Her face was unreadable, but there was a sharpness in her eyes that sent chills down my spine. She didn't greet me. She didn't look at Lily. She just turned to my husband and said firmly, "It's time. Alec needs to go." I froze. My heart stopped. I felt like I was underwater, hearing her words echo in slow motion. My husband looked shocked too, but he didn't speak. My breath caught in my throat. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but I couldn't. My voice felt trapped. That night, I sat in the nursery, holding Lily close. I thought about everything: the months of pregnancy, the pain of birth, and now the threat of losing our home. I didn't understand why this was happening. I kept replaying her words in my head, trying to find a clue. But the harder I thought, the less I understood. The days that followed were even worse. Every visit from my mother-in-law became a battle of words. She would hint at ultimatums, tell me I wasn't fit to be here, that I should step aside for the baby's sake. She never gave a clear reason. She just made me feel unwelcome in my own home. My husband tried to defend me, but I could tell he was torn. He wanted peace, but he also wanted to keep his relationship with his mother. I felt like I was losing him, not to another woman, but to her influence. It hurt more than I expected. One night, after another tense dinner, I sat alone in our living room, Lily asleep in my arms. I whispered to her softly, "Mommy doesn't understand why this is happening, but I promise I will protect you." My voice broke with emotion. I didn't know if I could keep that promise, but in that moment, I swore I would, no matter what it took. The weeks passed, and the tension only grew. Every small interaction became a test, an unspoken battle. I was constantly walking on eggshells, afraid of triggering something worse. My mother-in-law's visits became more unpredictable, her comments sharper. It felt like a countdown, like something was about to explode. And then, it happened. One evening, she came over again, but this time, she didn't just hint. She said it clearly, with a voice that cut through the air like a blade. "Alec, when your husband's first child is here, you need to leave. There's no place for you here anymore." The words hit me harder than I ever imagined. My breath stopped. My hands tightened around Lily. My husband looked like he'd been punched. I felt like the walls of our home were closing in on me, and in that moment, I realized this wasn't just about rent. This was about something much bigger, something I wasn't ready to face. I don't know yet what will happen next, but I do know one thing: my fight is just beginning. Because when your home and your family are threatened, you don't stand down, you stand up, and I'm ready to stand. That night, sleep felt impossible. I lay awake in the dark, the words replaying over and over. "When your husband's first child is here, you need to leave." They echoed in my head like a warning, each repetition making the weight heavier. It wasn't just a sentence, it was a declaration, a line drawn in the sand. I couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change forever. I held Lily close, staring at her tiny face, her chest rising gently with every breath. Her innocence was my anchor, but at the same time, it made me terrified that I could lose her, my home, my family. The next morning was cold and silent. My husband left early for work without saying a word. His shoulders tense, I could feel him pulling away. I sat on the couch, rocking Lily, trying to make sense of it all. The silence was suffocating. I wanted to scream, to cry, to beg my mother-in-law for answers, but the thought of confronting her directly filled me with dread. By noon, she arrived again. This time, she came with a kind of purpose in her step. Her eyes locked on me like she was reading my soul. She didn't bother greeting me. She walked straight to the living room, her voice steady but cold. "Alec, it's time we talk." I swallowed hard. My heart pounded in my chest. Every nerve in my body was screaming to run away, but I stayed, clutching Lily protectively. She sat across from me, her hands folded neatly in her lap. Her tone was calm, but her words were sharp. "This isn't personal," she said, though her eyes betrayed otherwise. "But when a child arrives, especially a first child, the family structure changes. Your presence here, it's not part of the plan." I blinked, trying to absorb her words. My throat felt dry. "What plan?" I whispered. She didn't answer directly. Instead, she stood and walked toward the window, looking out without meeting my gaze. "You'll understand soon," she said softly. Then she left, just like that. No explanation, no closure. I sat there, stunned. Lily stirred in my arms, her tiny fingers curling around mine. I felt a strange mix of fear and anger rising inside me. I didn't know what my mother-in-law wanted, but I knew one thing: she was determined to push me out, and the thought of losing everything I had built felt unbearable. Over the next days, life became a constant battle. Every interaction with her was tense. Every glance, every word carried an unspoken challenge. I could see the strain in my husband's face too. He was torn between his love for me and his loyalty to his mother. It was like watching him fracture slowly, piece by piece. One afternoon, I overheard her talking to my husband in hushed tones. I didn't catch everything, but one sentence struck me clearly. "She won't leave on her own. We'll have to make her." My stomach dropped. That wasn't just an opinion, it was a threat. I started feeling trapped, like there was no safe place left. Even our home, the place I thought was ours, now felt like a battlefield. Every creak of the floor, every knock at the door sent my heart racing. I began wondering, how far would she go? How much was she willing to take from me? Then came the night it all broke. It was late. Lily was asleep. My husband was in the other room, his phone pressed against his ear. I could hear fragments, words like "move out, now," and "it's not negotiable." My chest tightened with panic. I didn't want to believe it, but I knew it was happening. I stepped into the hallway, my voice trembling. "What's going on?" He didn't look at me. "It's your mom. She says you have to go. She's making demands." My heart sank. We just had Lily. How can she do this now? He shook his head, avoiding my gaze. "I don't know, Alec. I don't know." That night, we didn't speak much. The air was thick with tension. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, trying to fight back tears. I felt powerless, but underneath that fear, something began to grow, something stronger. A resolve. The next day, I decided I couldn't stay silent. I confronted her. I told her everything. I felt the hurt, the confusion, the fear. I told her Lily needed a home, not a war. I told her I wasn't going anywhere without answers. She looked at me with that same unreadable expression, her lips tight. Then she whispered words I'll never forget. "This isn't about Lily. This is about respect. And respect can't be bought." Her words cut deeper than anything before. They weren't about money. They weren't about rent. They were about something much older, something far more personal. At that moment, I realized this battle wasn't just for my home. It was for my dignity, my right to be a part of my own family's story. I didn't know how it would end, but I knew I had to fight. And so, I made a decision. I would stand, no matter the cost. Because sometimes, fighting isn't about winning. It's about refusing to lose yourself. That morning, the air in our home felt heavy, like the calm before a storm. I woke up before Lily, my mind already racing. Every sound felt louder, the hum of the refrigerator, the creak of the floorboards, even the wind brushing against the windows. I knew something was coming, something unavoidable. My husband was gone again, and I didn't even ask where. I sat in the living room, Lily cradled in my arms, staring at the wall. My thoughts were spinning, but one thing was clear: I couldn't hide anymore. When she walked in, my mother-in-law, it was with an air of certainty. No hesitation, no softness, just the quiet confidence of someone who already believed they had won. She didn't greet me, she just said, "It's time, Alec." Her voice was cold, deliberate. Those two words felt like a final verdict. My chest tightened, my heart pounding. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run, but I stayed. Lily stirred against me, sensing my tension. Her small hand brushed my cheek, and for a second, everything paused. She stepped closer. You've stayed long enough. You know what's expected of you now. I looked up at her, my voice trembling. Why now? Lily just came into this world. Don't you see she needs stability? Love. She cut me off with a quiet laugh. Not cruel, but heavy with finality. This isn't about love. It's about respect. And respect is something you haven't given us. This house isn't yours. You've lived here because of me. And when the time comes, you leave. Her words felt like a blade slicing through the air. I wanted to argue, to tell her I pay for my place, that I've given everything I have, but she wasn't hearing me. And my husband stayed silent, watching from the hallway with an unreadable face. Then she said something that shattered me. When your husband's first child is born, you need to leave. That's the plan. Don't fight it. It wasn't a request. It wasn't even an argument. It was an order. My chest burned. My hands gripped Lily tighter. You can't just decide that for us, I whispered, more to myself than to her. She took a step back, her eyes cold but calm. Watch me. The silence after that was deafening. I could hear my heart thudding in my ears. I could hear Lily's soft breathing. I could hear my own fear. And beneath it all, a rising anger. I knew she had power here. She knew she could push me out. But in that moment, I realized I had something she didn't. My voice, my will to fight. I stood up slowly, holding Lily close. My knees shook, but my voice was steady. You want me gone? Fine. But not without a fight. Not without truth. Her lips curled in a faint smirk. Then prepare yourself. The argument erupted like fire. Not loud, but sharp, full of years of hidden tension, unspoken resentment, and stubborn pride. I told her how I've worked to make this place home, how I've sacrificed everything for this family, how Lily deserves safety. My words were raw, full of emotion. Her replies were clipped, each one like a brick hitting my chest. Thought my husband finally spoke, but his voice was weary. We need peace, Alec. This isn't just about us, it's about the family. I looked at him, my heart breaking, but my voice didn't falter. Family doesn't make orders like this. Family protects. Family doesn't threaten mothers and babies. She stared at me silently, her face unreadable. Then, without warning, she turned and walked toward the door. My breath caught. I thought it was over. But before she left, she paused. This isn't done. You'll see. When the time comes, you'll understand why. And then, she was gone. The silence that followed was heavier than any fight. My husband and I stood there, Lily asleep in my arms, both of us too shocked to speak. My body trembled not from fear, but from the intensity of what had just happened. I felt like the ground beneath me had cracked, and I was falling into a place I couldn't see. But one thing was clear, I couldn't stop now. I wouldn't. That night, I lay awake, thinking about her words, about the fight ahead. I thought about Lily, about my home, about my dignity. My mind replayed every detail, the way she looked at me, the way she spoke, the way my husband avoided my eyes. I knew something was coming, something that would change everything. And deep down, I felt it. This wasn't just about a house. This was about control, about respect, about survival. I didn't know how it would end, but I knew it would end in one way or another. And I would not let it end without standing my ground, because sometimes, the hardest battles aren't fought in the open. They are fought in the silence. And in that silence, I promised myself one thing I would not lose. The days after that moment felt unreal. Like living in a shadow, I moved through the house quietly, careful not to wake Lily, careful not to let my thoughts spill too loud. But every corner of the house reminded me of what had happened. That conversation with my mother-in-law still played in my mind like a haunting melody, cold, sharp, impossible to ignore. But my husband and I barely spoke. When we did, it was short, clipped exchanges, full of tension. I wanted answers. He gave me silence. That silence became heavier with each passing day, until it felt like it was pressing down on me. I started questioning everything: my marriage, my home, my worth. One evening, I sat on the balcony, cradling Lily in my lap, staring at the city lights. My thoughts were too loud to ignore. I realized that I had been holding in fear, anger, sadness, and confusion all at once. It was exhausting, but it was also a turning point. I knew I couldn't live like this, under someone else's shadow, dictated by rules I never agreed to. I began making changes, quiet ones at first, speaking up more to my husband, reaching out to friends for support, looking into my rights. It wasn't easy. Every step felt like walking on a tightrope, balancing the fear of losing everything against the need to stand up for myself. Then one afternoon, my mother-in-law came back. She didn't knock, she didn't greet me. She just walked in, eyes cold, and said the words again, "The time is coming." But this time, I didn't flinch. I looked her straight in the eyes. "No, the time is now for truth, for respect, and I will not be silent anymore." It wasn't just about the house anymore. It was about dignity. It was about telling my own story. About showing Lily that her mother stands for what's right, even when it's hard. We didn't resolve everything that day. There were still fights, tears, and long silences, but something shifted inside me. I wasn't the scared girl who stayed silent. I was Alex, someone who had faced injustice, who had been tested, and who chose to stand tall. Looking back now, I understand that this story wasn't just mine. It was about every woman who has been told she doesn't belong, who has been pushed aside without a voice. It's about the power of standing up, even when the world says you can't. Sometimes, life breaks you to show you your own strength, and I found mine not in silence, but in speaking out. I still don't know what will happen next. My home is no longer the same. My relationships are changed forever. But I do know this: I will fight for Lily. I will fight for myself. And I will not let anyone take away my voice. Because one day, she will ask me, "Mom, why did you stand your ground?" And I want to be able to look her in the eyes and say, without fear, "Because I had to. Because you deserve a world where your voice matters, and because silence is never the answer." The question now isn't if I'll keep fighting, it's how far I'll go. And maybe, just maybe, that's the story worth telling. Because this isn't just my fight. It's everyone's fight. And I wonder how many of us will stay silent before we find the courage to speak.